Thank you everybody for joining us today for an Altasciences presentation about the flexibility factor, adaptive formulation strategies that drive clinical success. My name is Anthony James. I'm an Executive Director of Business Development here at Altasciences. I represent the CDMO services, but because of our cross-platform synergy, I also understand the intricacies that go on with our CRO services, including our clinic, bioanalytical, and preclinical services. And this specific presentation talks about how we can pull in the clinical business unit infrastructure that we have here at Altasciences tighter to our CDMO services and create an adaptive formulating, dosing, testing model that can help accelerate your clinical timelines while also driving clinical success using an adaptive model versus standard batch-to-batch manufacturing and formulation development that you might see at a more traditional CRO or CDMO. Once again, my name is Anthony James. I'll be talking to you today, and my contact information will be provided at the end of this presentation. In case you have any further questions or want to reach out to me at any time, I'm more than happy to have a more targeted or pointed discussion with you about your specific project or your specific questions in general. So for our objectives today in our session description, in early stage development, speed and adaptability are largely the discerning area between costly delays and your path to market. So really being able to mitigate the standard non-flexible type of approach to formulation development and manufacturing and give way to a more adaptive model that allows for speed from the early stages through to that final delivery. Using our pharmacy on demand or ClinDMO approach enables that real-time formulation adjustment during your first in-human study specifically, so that emerging clinical data results that you're getting throughout the study, not just guesswork, determine the optimal dose and excipient mix before committing to the full-scale GMP manufacturing that you would get at the next stage, either phase 1B, phase 2, phase 3, or beyond. In this session, you'll learn what pharmacy on demand and R&D formulation looks like, how adaptive formulation strategies can reduce the development risk and conserve API during your study, Altasciences' first-in-human clinical offering in a general sense, and how our approach can help from early-stage adaptive formulation work to getting to that full-scale GMP manufacturing and eventual commercialization and marketing of your product. So at a glance, Altasciences is an organization that advances drug development from lead candidate selection through to clinical proof of concept and further beyond. Being a full-service, mid-sized CRO and CDMO integrated company with over 30 years of experience really allows us to have this type of approach where we have a client-focused, sponsor-focused mindset while also understanding the intricacies of the drug development pipeline and regulatory pathways to approval. We have state-of-the-art facilities that we boast underneath our overall umbrella. We have 9 total facilities in the US and Canada, which allow us to work on a variety of different projects, a variety of different dosage forms, a variety of different indications. We're fully indication agnostic. So working at an early stage, looking for early stage formulation all the way through to clinical dosing and beyond, no matter the type of dosage form. The one thing I will say is that from a drug product perspective, we primarily focus on small molecules. There is a different bucket for large molecule and biologics work that we won't cover today. It does allow for some more technical elements where in terms to early stage formulation, but overall, it's something that can still follow the same pathway if you have those capabilities. Whether you have a single study or a complete program, our goal is to really drive and simplify that drug development process with speed and ease, using our locations in US and Canada and our over 2,500 employees now at this stage. Just a brief overview of our locations. One thing that I will point out here that's a little nuanced and that we will be covering today is that if you see the dots in LA, Kansas City, and Montreal, those have a little bit of the manufacturing analytical services as well as the clinical. So these are all of our phase 1 healthy volunteer clinics. We have 3 different ones, 2 in the US, 1 in Canada. And because of our offering with this adaptive clinical model, we would ask in this presentation to think of CDMO not as a facility. Lots of times people will think CDMO services and think only of the facility where those services are based. However, we are asking to change that mindset and think of it more as a service, right? Think of formulation development and manufacturing of drug product as a service offering that can be performed at any of these different locations or provided to these different locations from our facility in Philadelphia in a seamless type of fashion. So that's one thing that I would hope to change the narrative on when it comes to CDMO and what that means for the company and for the industry in general. Integrating the services. So really accelerating that drug development cycle by integrating our services from preclinical through to commercialization with the goal of getting medicines to patients faster. That's really the end all be all here, is keeping a patient first mindset, trying to help both the patient and the sponsor, patient getting the medicine faster with a higher degree of quality in a way that doesn't use API as a valuable resource and expend that API to get to that endpoint quicker. So there's a natural connection between the CDMO and the clinic. As products advance towards clinical studies, you need clinical trial material, and that's where a CDMO comes into play. Specifically with Altasciences, we prepare solid dosage forms, liquid dosage forms, and more to support those phase 1 clinical trials that we have in-house. We can also support that clinical trial manufacturing from phase 1 through 4 and commercial drug products, and can also tech transfer products as well, using our overall offering. One thing that is innate to this presentation and to bringing these two business units and these ideas together is this idea that they're already connected from the get-go, right? They've been connected by formulating, manufacturing, and supplying those for the studies. That's existed since the need existed, since clinical studies existed. So really drawing this adaptive model and changing the paradigm there was something that wasn't a huge step or a huge deviation from an already existing infrastructure. In addition to manufacturing clinical trial material that is innovative or an NCE, we also support the clinic with over-encapsulation, adding a tablet or a capsule to another capsule and backfilling with excipients for blinding purposes, manufacturing placebo units, and relabeling of drug products. So all this to say that these two business units and these two offerings and these two parts of the infrastructure of the industry and of our company have already been married together in a sense. We just pulled them closer together via our adaptive clinical studies and our pharmacy on demand. So what exactly is this? This is the idea of optimizing formulation dosing strategies by bringing these two under one roof. The challenge really is that plenty of sponsors face uncertainty early on in the process. The ideal formulation, the ideal dose, the ideal excipients may not be yet defined for the drug product in humans as it graduates from that drug product advancing beyond the preclinical stages. This leads to production of excess drug product. This can lead to consuming valuable APIs, really spending a lot of unnecessary money, time, and resources upfront, and also not being able to get to the right endpoint. If you go into a study and you know that you're going to need a certain amount of material, that's great, but you might not know the exact dose that you're going to need, the best formulation, the best excipients, the best functional excipients, the best dosage form to use for that. And so going in with this type of approach, operating under a protocol versus operating under a batch record, and really creating a more space in your DOE for this type of approach is what's really going to help with the timeline, with the cost savings, and with preserving that API and eventually getting to a more efficacious drug product at the end. Our solution is to deliver the GMP services directly at the clinical site. So manufacturing under GMP conditions at the clinical site, dosing to participants, analyzing that product in real time, and then titrating or adjusting the formulation or dose with the ability to continuously repeat and go through this cycle over and over again as necessary. This approach is what really accelerates decision-making and conserves critical resources to help streamline adaptive clinical trials. Currently, our clinics do have the ability to operate under GLP conditions as well. So this is not going to be an end-all be-all for every single project, but in a case where a program needs GMP services and needs GMP drug product for their dose, this is a way to go about that process. So marrying these together really accelerates the time from manufacture to administration. The adaptation of IP formulations helps bring that preclinical formulation into the clinic and ensure subject safety when advancing from a preclinical model to a human model. Humans have a different um, overall biology than animals, even though we look at those preclinical models as indicators of human dosing. There are some nuances that need to be obeyed with changing that formulation and going into humans. And we do that during this adaptation of the IP formulations. Study objectives sometimes require specific formulation, might require a change of a route of administration. So might need to adjust from maybe having less oral bioavailability than we expected, or might need to, for a patient population, change the route to maybe being an injectable, or maybe go from an injectable into an oral dose. So that's something that you can do during this adaptation process. Additionally, there's a tolerability, bioavailability, and PK profile that can be identified. So looking at really the preclinical formulation itself, does it work well in humans? Do the study objectives require specific formulation of that API? Do we need to change that route of administration due to patient population or to differences in the metabolism of the product? And then how is the product tolerated? What's the bioavailability look like? What's the PK profile? So definitely a bunch of boxes to check as we transition from preclinical models to human models. Another key factor here is stability. So stability studies can range from anywhere from days to weeks to months to years. With this type of model, you only need short-term stability data of the intended dose. So you don't need to have products that are shelf life stable for a month, 6 months, a year, 2 years prior to dosing. You can make the product have only 1 or 2 weeks of stability, dose the product, and then be able to titrate up or down and change as necessary. So it's really a flexible process, allowing us to adjust the dose strengths prior to or during the clinical trial while it's ongoing. It's a real-time manufacturing, so IP is not a rate-limiting step. We see a lot of times when we're waiting on IP for other clinical studies that aren't using this adaptive model, that IP delays, so manufacturing delays from other providers, can be a rate-limiting factor to continuing the study. Resupplies as well, that could be something that is rate limiting to a study. So, these are things that we're mitigating by going through this process. Once that final formulation is finalized, we are able to scale up to commercial GMP manufacturing within our own in-house under our own services. So it's not something that once we figure out the final formulation, final dose, we have to outsource or push to somebody else. We can actually carry that through at our facility in Philadelphia as well. Speaking of which, it's an accelerated make test ship cycle, but talking about our CDMO facility in Philadelphia, this serves as our hub for adaptive clinical manufacturing, which enables rapid formulation testing and delivery of study material to our clinical sites. So outside of preparing the product at our clinical sites themselves, we are able to make that GMP material at our CDMO facility in Philadelphia, streamline that process, do a make, test, ship cycle to our clinical sites within days, and be able to kind of use that as our hub for our ClinDMO and pharmacy on demand offering. This supports agile dosing strengths and faster dosing strategies and faster study progress in phase 1 trials, and can really help as you transition beyond phase 1, because we have already had that API within our facility that is set up for phase 2, 3, 4, and commercial manufacturing, and as well as the analytical setup at our facility to be able to do the testing. So all of the relationship building, all of the liaising with the API and understanding the API has been done at our facility, so that once we advance and get the final dose and get through the early first in human studies, we can take that product and help with the drug product preparation for any advanced studies beyond that. Speaking of our clinical expertise and our clinical backbone, we have a robust clinical backbone, 580 plus beds in North America between our 3 sites. So it's not something where we're ever at we're never strapped for space necessarily. We have lots of capabilities, lots of hands on deck, lots of expertise in our clinical business unit, as well as featuring our CDMO facility here to help provide product to those business units or those clinical sites in addition to that USP 795 and 797 GLP compounding that we do at our clinical facilities as well. In addition, we have our clinical pharmacology expertise, so being able to understand and evaluate the products is an important part of that adaptive model. You have to know all the different components of what you're looking to identify in order to understand why you're adapting, right? So we have the early phase expertise for phase 1 and 2, including all the NDA enabling requirements. So for first in human protocols, we're talking about SAD and MAD studies, fully adapted design capabilities, understanding POC and food effect, EPQT for TQT waiver, CSF collection, looking at proof of concept, special populations, drug-drug interactions, ethnobridging, food effects, age effects, gender effects, PKPD, and 505B2. So really being able to identify and look at a study, look at the patient population, and evaluate the drug product to know how can we adapt this during the study? Do we need to look at a food effect? Do we need to look at an age effect? Do we need to modify the study design? Does it need to change? Does the SAD and MAD need to change? Do we need to go for a higher dose, lower dose, mid dose? All of those things are being evaluated by our clinical pharmacologists during the study, and they can communicate that to the people that are working on the drug product manufacturing and the adaptive formulation efforts to ensure that the final product that's being dosed, the final test article, is reflective of those types of approaches. We have a robust, offering in terms of first in human studies, about 30 to 40 first in human studies per year that we manage across our sites using our 3 phase 1 clinics. So it's something that we're very used to. It's an area that we play in quite often. It's not a space that's new to us in any sense of the imagination. We've done adaptive and complex multi-part protocols or POC arms, elderly, food effects, etc. PD assessments, cognitive biomarkers, PBMC. So we do safety reviews and understanding, we'll generate the safety data and or the PK profile for the product. We'll evaluate the dosage. We'll manipulate the dose if we need to. We'll review during we'll run a safety review meeting for the dosing decision about the next stage. Does it need to adapt? Do we need to stick with the current dose? Do we need to change the excipients, etc.? And then move to the next cohort in the clinic following that safety review meeting. At our CDMO in Philadelphia, outside of just adaptive modeling and first in human phase 1 supports, we do have the ability to support R&D, non-GMP formulation development, stock standard formulation development. We can also prepare GLP tox samples for our preclinics. We have the ability to prepare clinical supplies for phase 2 and 3 beyond just that phase 1 supply, as well as commercial. We have 5 commercial assets that come out of the facility year over year. Stability support. So like I mentioned, although you don't need 1 month, 6 month, 12-month stability, we have that capability on site in case we wanted to run those samples for longer. In addition, we have the stability support on site for those 1 to 2 week stability studies as well. And then finally, we have regulatory support through our research services team, which can help with module 2 or 3 writing, helping to get those IND or NDA filings submitted, or a CTA MAA if you're going to go that approach in terms of ex-US support. At this facility, it's about 65,000 square feet. We've handled over 200 projects, high potency capabilities, so being able to handle high potent APIs of an OEL 1 through 4 and grade C ISO 7 capabilities as well. We don't have our ISO 5 grade A capabilities just yet, but that's something that is currently on our list to achieve and bring onto the facility. We have about 50 staff on site, so lots of hands on deck, 27 active clients and 5 commercial clients, and a lot of different platform technologies that we look at on site. So whether the product is going to be a neat API and capsule fill for that first in human study, a tablet, or any sort of other more enabled formulation, we can definitely handle those on site to make sure that we're evaluating the product from a keen formulation development eye, as well as from a backbone in the industry, looking at regulatory requirements and a clinical focus. So on demand, the final wrap up here is really accelerating time from manufacturer to clinic. So making these small batch preparations, making, 50, 100, 1,000 units versus making 10,000 units and expending all that API up front. That's a big component, is saving API and making small batch preparations versus a large overall batch manufacturing process. Advancing preclinical formulations to clinical, so looking at the nuances of moving from an animal model into a human model, using our narcotics licensing. So we are DEA approved and we have narcotics licensing at our clinics as well to be able to handle those types of products. Study objectives require a specific formulation and might need a change of route of administration or tolerability. So these are all things of talking that we can evaluate at an early stage and during the process to ensure that we are accelerating the time from manufacturing to clinical dosing and administration. Early phase appropriate manufacturing. So we have complex on-site pharmacy compounding, that GLP 795 and USP 795 and 797 compounding that supports GLP compounding of products as well as GMP on-site compounding. We have adaptive formulations during our first in human design. So being able to adapt those formulations at an early time point. Small scale GMP manufacturing. So graduating from that small batch preparation through to those more batch record driven GMP manufacturing activities, development, validation, stability, QC, QA release, and drug product dispensing. So being able to do all those components that follow the first in human dosing and moving that from into a phase 1B or 2 or even 3 and beyond product. Speaking of final and beyond products, the last component here is taking that final product through commercialization. So once we get that final formulation, using our seamless CMC offering across our different business units to get that product through to market, running stability programs, late stage clinical manufacturing, pack label distribution, and then helping with any tech transfers or backups that might come along the way. So although this is a blue sky scenario, and products might come from the initial stages where formulation development work is needed at the beginning, all the way through to commercialization, we're happy to manage any pieces of these along the pathway, even if they're entered in not at the beginning. So we have any entry point in order to help our sponsors graduate these products and get them to patients faster. And that's it for me. I want to say thank you for your time today. I really appreciate you tuning in and your interest in Altasciences for this offering. Please feel free to reach out to me at any time. My information is listed here, and I also have different colleagues that I can put you in contact with in case you have any other needs that are more clinic-based, bioanalytical-based, preclinical-based, or even for our CRO services.